a cup of coffee, sit back and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life features stories to inspire and motivate you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. Visit CYACYL.com.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in. Many people believe self-healing is some voodoo thing relegated to New Age gurus. According to today's guest, Dr. Lissa Rankin, it's a scientifically verifiable fact that human beings have physiological self-repair mechanisms and that we can harness those self-healing powers to heal the body and the mind. Dr. Rankin is an integrative medicine physician, speaker, and author. Discouraged by our broken healthcare system, she set out to discover why some patients experience cure from seemingly incurable illnesses, while others remain sick even when they receive the best medical care. Fueled by a passion to determine what really makes people healthy and what really predisposes them to illness, she dug into the medical literature to study how doctors might better care for patients and patients might better care for themselves. Her research helped her understand and translate how thoughts and emotions originating in the mind translate into measurable physiological phenomena. She's now leading a healthcare revolution to help patients heal themselves while encouraging the healthcare industry to embrace and facilitate, rather than resist, the possibility of patient-initiated spontaneous remission. Her new book is entitled Mind Over Medicine: Scientific Proof You Can Heal Yourself. Lissa, thank you so much for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Lissa, I love your quote. Promoting health without encouraging others to seek wholeness is an exercise in futility. Not until we realize that our bodies are mirrors of our interpersonal, spiritual, professional, sexual, creative, financial, environmental, mental, and emotional health will we truly heal.
Yeah, I learned that really the hard way. And it wasn't until I moved to Marin County and was practicing integrative medicine here where literally my patients were the proverbial choir. I mean, I've never lived in a place where people are more health conscious. And my patients were drinking their green juice and they had these vegan diets and they're working out with personal trainers and they're sleeping 8 hours a night and they're taking 20 supplements and they're basically doing everything right. And they were just as sick as many other patients. Uh-huh. And, I came to realize that it's not enough just to care for the needs of the body. Those things are important, absolutely. And if you don't have them, they can certainly lead to problems. But what I found is that it's, caring for yourself in this sort of health-conscious way that I was trained to think was the end-all, be-all in medicine isn't enough. So many of those patients who were so health-conscious and caring for their bodies were in miserable relationships. They were in soul-sucking jobs that they hated. They had tremendous stressors in their financial life. There were all these other contributing factors, and that's what was making them sick. So no amount of green juice was going to fix that.
At one time, you said that you wanted to turn your back on medicine, and you even regretted being a physician. So what do you think is broken about the way we approach healing today?
I think we've come to believe that our bodies are none of our business, that if we get sick, we have to go and submit to somebody else's external treatment, whether or not it is aligned with our own intuition, the voice of our body's wisdom, and that by putting ourselves in somebody else's hand, we release and relinquish all responsibility for why that illness is there in the first place and how we can overcome it. And what I've come to realize by asking some really simple questions of my patients, things like, what does your body need in order to heal, is that we are much wiser about what it takes to overcome illness than we think, and that putting our bodies in somebody else's hands is actually sabotaging ourselves.
Now, Lissa, you were talking about the people that came to you who were seemingly doing everything right, and they may believe that they had the power or they were taking the power to do what was necessary. So what was lacking in those people? Is it because of our mind? Does medicine have it backwards? Do we think that the body is fueling the mind? Isn't it the other way around?
It is. The body is absolutely a manifestation of the mind, and there are physiologic mechanisms that explain this. So those patients that I was talking about, when I started asking them, what does your body need in order to heal, the answers they gave me were shocking to me and often shocking to them. And they were saying things like, I need to leave my husband. I need to move to Santa Fe. I need to quit my job. I need to put my mother in a nursing home. I need to get my son in rehab. They weren't saying, I need an antidepressant, I need an antibiotic.
Well, Lissa, to interrupt for a moment, what type of illness are we talking about? Are we talking about people that are dealing with depression, or are we talking about someone who may have diabetes or even cancer?
Many of these people had a laundry list of 10 different illnesses. And, certainly the ones that are most responsive to that sort of mentality and treatment are those that have stress-related illnesses. So, heart disease, high blood pressure, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, a lot of these sorts of illnesses. But what I found by researching through the Spontaneous Remission Project, which was put out by the Institute of Noetic Sciences, this is a database of 3,500 cases of spontaneous remission. 3,500 cases, everything from stage 4 cancer to HIV to gunshot wound to the head. These were cases reported in the medical literature of people who were either not given treatment or were given inadequate treatment believed not to be possible for cure. And these people got better on their own. So it made me realize that, yes, there are definitely some types of illnesses that are more amenable to self-healing through the mind, but for all we can tell, any illness has the capacity to be healed by the body. The body has natural self-repair mechanisms. So it's just a matter of creating the opportunity for the body to be able to trigger on those self-repair mechanisms.
So does it come down to really giving our immune system the tools that it needs? So in other words, if we stay in that bad marriage or we stay in that constant state of grief, we're stressing our body, and that's impacting our immune system. And if the immune system is compromised, that's when illness sets in. Is that basically the process?
That's part of it. The immune system is only the case for those immune-mediated illnesses like cancer, for example, or infection. But what happens is that, let's say, for example, you're in a soul-sucking job. You're in this job that you hate. You're working 12 hours a day. You're stressed all the time. That actually, your body can't tell the difference between a stressful job or a stressful marriage or, a stressful relationship with your family. Your body can't tell the difference between that and a physical threat to your body. So, for example, your body has this fear mechanism built in, designed to help you outrun the cave bear, right? So, as an evolutionary process, our bodies were created this way so that if you're getting attacked by a lion, your hypothalamus starts sending out signals. The hypothalamus communicates with the pituitary gland. This communicates with the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland starts spitting out cortisol. The sympathetic nervous system gets flipped on, and you have the whole fight or flight response. Part of that stress response is that, your blood pressure goes up, your heart rate goes up, all of your blood flow is kind of shunted away from regular organ systems like the reproductive system or the digestive system, because that's not what's important when you're being chased by a lion. The blood is being shunted to your large muscles in your thighs, for example. But what part of that process is it also does shut down the immune system, because if you're about to get bitten by the lion, it wants to decrease the inflammatory response, and the immune system is part of that inflammatory response. So over time, if you're chronically turning on that stress response, the body is unable to repair itself, because only in the relaxed state, only when the parasympathetic nervous system is in charge, can those self-repair mechanisms actually be implemented.
So what we've been basically doing is, rather than getting to the root cause of our issues, we're just bandaging it by taking a pill.
Exactly. And what happens is if you're not treating the root cause of your illness, you can actually, you can cure one illness only to manifest as a different illness. And that's what I was seeing all the time with these patients here in Marin is, I could treat them biochemically. I could give them the right hormone. I could give them the right supplement. I could give them the right drug. That symptom would get better, and they'd be back a week later with a new symptom.
Lissa, I think we have our work cut out for us in one area. We are so conditioned to believe that we need that pill. And so, for example, if I am given a diagnosis of something that really scares me, fear kicks in, and we feel that if we're not following this traditional medicine course, or if we're not doing what we're told, we're going to die. People are so afraid of making the wrong decision. So how do we overcome that and truly believe that we can tap into our own healing power?
Well, first off, let me just make a comment that when I'm talking about self-healing, I'm absolutely not saying ditch modern medicine. We've come a long way in the past 100 years. And, absolutely, if you get a urinary tract infection, you've got a fever and it's in your kidneys, definitely take an antibiotic. We now have great tools out there for these sorts of things. So I'm not suggesting that people should be skipping going to the doctor or not getting their cancer treatment or any of those things. But I am saying that what you think about your health actually has a profound influence on your health. And we know this because of all of the data that we have on the nocebo effect. Are you familiar with that term?
Yes. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So you were saying we get this fear response when we get an illness. And that's absolutely true. The nocebo effect is the opposite of the placebo effect. So the placebo effect basically is when when the body has a physiological manifestation of improvement and wellness in response to a sugar pill or a saline injection or some kind of fake treatment. The nocebo effect is the opposite. It's when you think something bad is going to happen to you, and then it does. So, for example, you inject somebody with saline and you tell them that it's chemotherapy and they lose their hair and vomit. That's an example of the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect comes into play in our bodies in profound ways that it was so upsetting to me to actually learn about this because it made me realize that I've probably done a lot of harm in my life as an MD before I realized this. Because the minute we start telling people, oh, you have this chronic illness, you're going to have it forever, it's incurable, you're terminal, you've got 3 months to live, then we start initiating that nocebo response. We start affecting the patient's brain, triggering those fear responses, turning on those stress responses, and basically, medically hexing these people. And I think that's a profound disservice that we're doing in the healthcare industry. And we're doing it in the name of autonomy. We want our patients to be informed. We want them to be practical. We want them to make good decisions about end-of-life care. We want them not to be in denial. And yet, who are we to say? If you're one of the 1 in 10 people who recovers from that stage 4 cancer, why do we feel like it's our job to give you such bad news?
Lissa, we need to take a break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation with Dr. Lissa Rankin and learn more about the healing power within. This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life now has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox. Each month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide the information that you need to inspire and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. As philosopher Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power. Use the wisdom provided in the publication and apply it to your everyday life. Visit cyacyl.com for more information or to begin your free subscription. That's cyacyl.com. Welcome back to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman, and our guest today is Dr. Lissa Rankin, author of the new book, Mind Over Medicine, Scientific Proof That You Can Heal Yourself. Lissa, you've gone out and you've talked to people about the importance of a positive, joy-filled professional life and positive relationships, strong friendships. Why are those two elements so important to our well-being, physical well-being?
I was shocked when I was doing my research into what really makes us healthy. This was what was fueling me. Like, what really predisposes us to illness? What really makes us healthy? If it's not just diet, exercise, getting enough sleep, taking our vitamins, if it's not just that, what is it? And so I started examining a lot of data around relationships, for example. And one study examining the people of Alameda County, California, found that in every age and sex category, people with the fewest social ties were 3 times more likely to have died over a 9-year period than those who reported the most social ties, even when you took into account pre-existing health conditions or socioeconomic status or smoking or alcohol use, obesity, all these other things that might be contributing to their health. Those with more social connections were even found to have lower rates of cancer. Those who did get cancer, for example, one study examined 3,000 nurses with breast cancer and found that those who were socially isolated had a 66% higher risk of mortality than those who had a large social network. And, there's tons more data on that. I have a whole chapter in Mind Over Medicine, which comes out in April of 2013. I have a whole chapter on the effects of loneliness and health. And that goes for, the strength of your social network, how many friends you have, how much time you spend with colleagues, whether or not you are part of a spiritual community, whether or not you're in a coupled relationship, whether or not you have a sex life. All of these things contribute to your health. And absolutely, as you said, your job is a huge part of your health. I was fascinated to come across all of the data that talks about what the Japanese call karoshi, which is translated as death by overwork. So in Japan, they actually collect statistics on death by overwork. And since they started recording in 1987, Japanese officials have estimated approximately 10,000 cases of karoshi, of otherwise healthy people, usually young people, who are working too hard, they're stressed at work, and then they just drop dead. You often have a stroke or heart attack with no pre-existing heart condition or pre-existing risk factors for stroke. So in Japan, the survivors of these people actually get benefits, kind of like workman's comp benefits, just like if you were a construction worker and you got killed on the job. So it's fascinating, the data that's coming out of Japan of what's happening when people are working in these stressful jobs. Many of them get these vague symptoms beforehand, dizziness, nausea, headache, stomachache, and then a few days later they just die. I just found this shocking because it's not just in Japan. I read a fascinating Chicago Tribune article about this, and basically they're saying it's just as bad in the U.S. We're just not tracking it because people here don't get benefits. So we are literally killing ourselves from work in this country, from not just from the amount of hours that we're working, but from the stress of our lives in our jobs where we're constantly attached now 24/7 to email, cell phones, pagers, laptops, iPads.
Right.
Everywhere we go, we're working these days, and it's not good for our health.
So, Lissa, we've been talking about the different aspects of our life and the importance that the whole being is to our health and well-being. So something tangible for someone who's sitting home now that was just diagnosed with some type of a condition or is dealing with a chronic illness and wants to take more control of his or her well-being. What are tangible steps that you would say this person needs to do? What can they do to get started? And what would you recommend be some type of a path for them to empower themselves?
Well, the good news is that while all of these things cause the stress response to turn on, the good news is that the body has a natural relaxation response. And this is the state in which the body can repair itself. So we can actually do things to turn on the relaxation response. Herbert Benson was the first to really study this. It's shocking to me that prior to the 1960s, doctors had no concept that stress and disease were linked. And Herbert Benson was a cardiologist who was studying high blood pressure, and he had this theory that blood pressure was related to stress. And yet nobody had ever made that link before. Nobody had studied that. That just it makes me laugh to even think that we had no idea. He knew that people who came to the doctor's office often had higher blood pressure, and he suspected that was because the doctors were stressing them out, but it had never been studied. So he started doing studies on meditation, on people. This was in the 60s where meditation was becoming increasingly popularized by the Beatles and Mia Farrow and these other celebrities that were talking a lot about it. So he started studying people, studying Tibetan monks, studying Californians who were meditating. And what he created was a technique that he calls the relaxation response. He wrote a best-selling book about it called The Relaxation Response. And it's basically a meditation technique. And in order to do this, he suggests picking a focus word, sort of a mantra, something like Om or peace or one or the Lord is my shepherd, whether it's something that has religious connotations or not, just to pick a mantra, to sit quietly in a comfortable position, to close your eyes and relax your muscles progressively from your feet to your calves, to your thighs, your abdomen, your shoulders, your head, neck, to breathe slowly and naturally, and as you do, to say this focus word or mantra silently as you inhale and exhale, to keep a passive attitude, not judging yourself about how well it's going, and to basically continue this process for 10 to 20 minutes, ideally 20 minutes a day. And what he found was that a whole host of health conditions were highly responsive to this. Everything from, heart disease to blood pressure to asthma to PMS to chronic pain, any number of conditions. So it's not just meditation that will initiate the relaxation response. You can also trigger the relaxation through a healthy sex life, through creative expression. You know, for me, it was, for years, I joked that medicine was my hemorrhage and art was my transfusion. I'm a professional artist, and I would come home at the end of the day and spend 4 or 5 hours in the art studio. And that was my medicine. I was initiating the relaxation response for myself after a long day of initiating the stress response. For some people, it's going to church or praying. It's doing yoga or playing with pets or laughing or singing or playing a musical instrument. So we all have the ways in which we can learn to trigger that relaxation response, because only when the body is in that state of physiologic rest, when the parasympathetic nervous system is in charge, can the body heal itself.
You have to be open to the concept of treating the whole person, of treating the mind, of treating the spirit, of treating the body to achieve the wellness.
Absolutely. And in Mind Over Medicine, as well as in the TEDx talk that I gave recently, I teach a wellness model that I call the whole health cairn. And a cairn, if you don't know the term, is the term for these stacks of balanced stones that you'll see on beaches or marking sacred landmarks. But what I particularly liked about the cairn, and the reason that I developed this wellness model around it, is that each of the stones in a cairn is interdependent on the other. You can't just pull one stone out of it without expecting the whole thing to tumble. So the stones in the whole health cairn that I describe are your relationships, your work, your spiritual life, your creative life, your sexual life, your financial life, your mental health, your environment, and the physical health of the body. And I put the body on the top of the cairn because I think it's the most fragile. I think when those other parts of our lives get out of balance, when our relationships aren't strong, when our work is too stressful, when we feel spiritually disconnected, you know, when we're craving a sex life and don't have one, or if we're in an abusive sexual relationship, when we're stressed about money, all of these things, when this gets out of balance, then I think the body is often the first to manifest this as physical symptoms. And if we don't learn to listen to the whispers of the body that come through as physical symptoms, then the body will often manifest much more serious illness.
Lissa, where can our listeners go to get more information about you and your work?
LissaRankin.com, LissaRankin.com.
So that's LissaRankin.com. And as always, you can visit our website, CYACYL.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on our site, listen to past shows as podcasts, read the digital magazine, sign up for our mailing list, take part in our book club, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Lissa, as I said in the beginning, I loved your quote because we tend to separate all the different elements and we think that they're not interconnected, but it really is the whole, and that's something that we need to remember for our physical, emotional, and spiritual health.
Absolutely.
Again, Lissa, thank you for joining us. This is Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. I'm Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.